That was me. I forgot to hit record earlier, so sorry about that, y'all.
It's okay.
Should we start over?
Another area that we really work hard with the patrons, and I'm pretty insistent on this, especially when I heard that noise. I went over and told the patron that we tell our patrons they have to watch it. People like to throw something in the laser that's possibly going to take 15 or 20 minutes between engraving and cutting, and then get on their computer, walk over to a different table to get on their computer. So we have set a station up. It's not the most comfortable station, but it does have a table and a chair that the patron can sit on. We need them to be there watching their work just in case there is an emergency. So when I was hearing that noise, I told the patron he really needed to be watching so he could be there immediately to turn the emergency stop off. It happened while I was there, so I did it. But that is another one of our safety kind of features, that the patron learns that they have the responsibility of watching. So if there's a fire, they're on it immediately, or if something's happening, it's on them. So they can't walk away. And I have people ask a lot, can I go use the bathroom? I'm like, sure you can. I'll watch your project for you. So we have drilled that into their head pretty securely. Do we have any other questions coming in?
Also to that, we have a bunch of laptops that you can come in anytime and do design work. So we try to tell patrons that we have 2-hour slots for machines. So if you need to do 15, 20 minutes, a half an hour of design work, and you can get your job done within those 2 hours, that's fine. But if you're asking for extra time over that 2 hours, and some of that time is design work, that's what we try to avoid. So if somebody comes in and they're not comfortable with designing things and they still need to, they're not comfortable with the design software, their designs aren't ready yet, we kind of ask them not to even reserve the machines at all unless they think that they can actually get it done in that 2 hours. So yeah, we usually have people just come in, they sit down at the computer, they get their work done. By the time they're done with their work, they're a little exhausted just from using software they're not used to using. So they, like, half the time won't even jump on machines, and they'll come back another day, set an appointment for those machines. But yeah.
So that's another good point with knowing your patrons, and understanding how they learn and what it is they're doing. One of the other points that Eric and I came up with was listening to the patrons. So what is the project that they're trying to do? Are they able to even explain what it is they're trying to do? Because that'll give you at least I find that gives me a huge cue as to how are they going to be using the machine. Like, do they understand the concept? Laser engraving is black and white, and you're not going to get the color gray, or that gray is going to give you a different depth in your cutting. So by listening to them explain their project, lets me know what I'm dealing with a level of understanding. Another thing is, on our website, we have videos of all of our machines. So we do have the patrons who have watched the video prior to coming in, so they have an understanding, or at least a thumbnail of knowledge of how the laser is going to function and what they may need to do for their project. What else do we have on here? So another piece that we have along with listening to the patron is not overloading them. So we can get into what kind of dithering options they want, speed, DPI frequencies. Eric touched on that earlier. If you go slower or if you change the power of the laser, sometimes they don't want all that information. They really just want to do their project. So again, it's understanding the patron and kind of what what are they looking to accomplish? So some really do want to know about dithering options. Others just want to do it.
Can you explain dithering?
Yes. Eric, would you like to explain dithering?
Dithering's just the algorithm in which it basically is going to lay down grayscale. If you go with normal and you have a good amount of contrast, you're going to see halftones. And then the other variations of dithering is going to try to blend the halftones. I don't have them all memorized, but there is a good time to use all of them. But yeah, normal's good for acrylic and glass, because you're going to, when it comes to acrylic and glass, well, okay, so wood, you just want to burn it. You want to make it dark. That's how you're going to get the contrast. When you're dealing with acrylic and glass, obviously it's the opposite. You're getting a light burn instead of a dark burn. And that is just from refraction, just different. It's no longer smooth. You're going to have a bunch of little dimples in your work, and kind of the more dimples, the better. So usually you have less DPI. If you have a higher resolution, it's going to be smoother, and then it's not going to be as white. You're not going to have as much contrast. So usually go a little bit less resolution, and I like to stick with the normal dithering because it is kind of a less quality, but it gives you more contrast. But yeah, spend a couple minutes on dithering, you'll know. Usually when I'm doing my own personal projects, I'll just look up the information again for me, just so I know which one to pick. That's nothing I've memorized. They get kind of technical. That being said, with trying to keep things simple, I do try to always get people to fully understand the difference by adding more power and less speed. Try to think of, all right, what are you trying to do? Are you trying to cut? Are you trying to engrave? Because even though we tell people to stand by their projects, they might walk away for 5 seconds. And if they put the wrong settings in and they think they're cutting properly and their settings are way off, you can start a fire pretty quickly. So I try to say, I use the example of anyone can hold a lighter under their hand for a brief second. If you're just passing through, it's no big deal. But if you hold it under there, you're gonna get burned really quickly. So when you're putting your settings in, think about your speed and your power. If your speed's real slow, you're gonna be burning something. So your power probably shouldn't be all the way up. And if it is, hopefully it's a thicker material and you're staying by it. Yeah, cutting something is definitely more dangerous, more apt to cause a fire than engraving.
Another thing we have a chart on the wall with our recommendations for the speed and the power and the DPI.
Thanks, Mikhail.
But I also make sure that the patron knows those are just recommendations. They are not diehard numbers. Some of them may be, as Eric was just explaining, but especially if they're engraving, do they want a dark engrave? Do they want a lighter engrave? We can always go back and engrave it again, but we can't take it away. So if they're hesitant, I just recommend they start with a higher power and lower that power as they go. I also recommend when people make appointments, if they have like scrap, if they have something else they can bring that they can practice on to get what they want, and then when they actually go to the real thing, they already have down what it is they want. Of course, it has to be the same material. It can't be a different wood. Another thing I've run into is some of us really like to measure everything to the exact nth degree. And others like me eyeball things because I'm pretty good at that and I'm satisfied with what I'm getting. So that's another thing to look at your patron with. I was helping a patron and she's like, oh my gosh, the last time they had me like measuring it. I said, you don't have to do that. If you want to eyeball it, you can it's not my project. I mean, if she's okay with it being eyeballed, I'm certainly okay with it. So that's another read. If they're an engineer, they're probably going to want to measure. If they're an artist, they're probably going to want to eyeball it. It's just kind of understanding your patron again.
Samantha asked where we got our numbers for our recommendations. I wasn't here when those charts went up originally, but our
They're out of the books. They're
straight out of the books. Okay.
Yeah, the book comes with recommendations, and we just copied their chart onto our wall cling and put it up on the wall.
There you go.
And then just to chime in really quickly, as the, the use of the laser changed, we might have had to alter a little bit, but we did start out with those originals.
Yeah, there's about 6 months we continued to use it while our tube was slowly dying. So we'd have to slow down our cuts. I think we went from 15% speed all the way down to 6% speed by the end. We had to really slow it down to be able to cut through certain things. But now we're back up to 25. Where'd you get these numbers? What sorts of projects are patrons making? I'd say our number one would be tumblers. We have the rotary tool in, and people are engraving powder coated tumblers or glasses, but probably mostly tumblers. Come Christmas time, a lot of ornaments. And then we have 2 or 3 patrons that make board games. We have one that's been working on a board game for years. And then we have a couple others that are just constantly making random board games better. Things for work, right? Usually things for just work and family, putting names on tumblers. A lot of that. Carolyn?
When Eric and I were discussing this project, we actually came up with 2 things that we thought were the coolest things that our patrons have made. And one was an architect student built a parking garage for a class project. And that's the kind of patron that is awesome. She was just so into it, wanted to learn everything. She came in, I don't know, several times. And then we had another person that made a map of a lake. So they took the, what would that be called? Like the geographic map that showed the levels of the lake. And she built those. They had a house on the lake, and she was making like a wall plaque for her parents. So that was pretty cool too. We have a question about expectations. That is actually a really great question. This page, Fiona, they have a drop-in session at her maker space. I especially new patrons, I always tell them that the design process is the longest. So if I like to say to a patron on the phone, tell me about your project. And that's when I get a handle as to, let's talk about the laser. So that's how I get a handle on whether they understand, say they're going onto acrylic or glass. They kind of want to flip their black and white when they're going onto acrylic and glass. Do they understand that? Like Eric was talking about the mug. Do they understand that it is etching the paint off the mug? It is not engraving the stainless steel. And then you get a better idea for their grasp of what it is they're actually doing. And that's when I would add time on. If they're not getting anything, I'm gonna add they may spend all the time designing because they're just not understanding what it is they're looking for in their design. I always throw in, that's if the machine doesn't break, because the machine does break. And once that happens, you know, I can't tell you when it's going to break, how it's going to break, or how long it's going to take me to fix it. So that is out of our hands. You know, if they bring in a mug, a tumbler that has a handle, the handles don't always turn. Some of the mugs may work and some of them may not. Another one is, are there threads? Like, is it a tumbler where the top screws on because the threads will get caught in the rotary tool and it jams up their design? All of that takes time, like getting that mug flipped around, realigning the focus, like everything with that now takes time because it's not a standard mug. You know, are they bringing in those Yeti mugs that are real fat at the top and then they get narrow at the bottom so they fit in your cup holder? They can't engrave down the whole side of that because the focus isn't going to be right. Do they, you know, do they understand that? So there are just so many things that can come into play that will cause a project to take more time than anybody could have anticipated. So I always try to let them understand that. Hopefully everything goes smooth and you're great and you're in and out within 20 minutes, but I can't guarantee that. Does that help with that answer about setting expectations? What other questions? Eric, do you want to add
It
to
wasn't my
that?
question, but that sounded great. I think that was a good one. I think he answered that well. I don't think I see any other new questions. Yep, Adobe Illustrator or all Adobe project, the Adobe suite. What design programs are we employing? We do have Inkscape. I've never seen anyone use it.
Do we have a diode versus a CO2 laser? I don't know the answer.
CO2. It's just something to bring up. You can always, we use blue painter's tape to put on our projects first, and then you just increase the speed to 100%, powers down to about 5% of what every machine's going to be different. I'm sure they probably come up with settings, provide those settings for you. The one tricky thing with them is if you have it out of focus really at all, since it's hitting the painter's tape so lightly, you won't even see anything. It still happens with us. We think we're going to run a test job and then we get nothing. We just realize we're out of focus, which now that I think about it is a great way to see if we're focused like perfectly. Because if you're just off a 0.5 millimeter, you won't even get any markings on your tape at all. But yeah, it's a great way to, if you're doing something like a mug, to see sizing. People always want to go as big as possible, and they'll measure the diameter and like, all right, it's 4 inches. I want to do 4 inches. And they don't realize that extra 1/2 inch or 3/4 on the sides, while you can see it, you can't read it. So you'll tell them that, but they still want to do it. So throw some tape down, let them do it, let them see that it's way too big. It's also good for placement. Yeah, painter's tape is a great blue painter's tape for engraving. It's a good trick.
It's like a
What
test drive. I'm sorry, go ahead,
A
Mikhail.
test print, yeah.
We just have a question about intro workshops as opposed to drop-in events or just a regular time on the machine.
We don't have intro workshops. One thing that we do, well, we did offer, and I'm sure we'll get back to it, is we would have classes, and we have found that people really like to take and make something in a class. So we don't have like a class where everybody stands around and learns how to use the laser. We'll have say coasters, pieces of wood already cut out on the router, and they each get one, and they're going to be able to laser engrave a design on it. And we keep it really simple and really basic, and it gets them on it without really getting their feet too wet. But at least for the person who's maybe apprehensive, it's a great way for them to start. There's also the question about the videos. We, all of us, have made videos for the machines, and we put them on our website. So we don't show them a video from the manufacturer. It's a video that we made, which is pretty much usually just an introductory video, so they can get an idea of what's going to be happening.
Carolyn, can I just respond to what you said about doing easy programs for patrons? You know, we've got summer reading going on at the moment in the library, which I'm sure most people have. But in order to get people in to use our laser cutter, we did a program, put it in there, we did a program with flowers, and we just pitched it towards families. And we just had so many people that were curious to see what a laser cutter did. And so I just had a simple flower program. It took 6 minutes to cut out 6 flowers. The children and adults were stood there watching the laser cutter. And then after that, they would sit down and then they would paint them. And then like the next group of people would come up and watch the laser cutter. I got through like 80 people doing that. It was crazy, but it was so much fun. And then I got lots of reservations after that to use the laser cutter. So it worked. So yeah, it's doable.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Julia. That's great.
Do we have any sort of like final points that you guys would like to make about interacting with patrons using the laser and sort of how to guide them?
We have covered everything we had in our notes.
I would like to bring up one other thing. It's kind of like right in the middle of what we were talking about a while ago. Even if somebody has brought in a material before and they feel like they know the settings, things have changed. It's now older. It could be, it could have more moisture in it. The laser could, the laser's older as well, so maybe it's not as powerful. So even when I'm doing my projects, I always like to do a test cut first. And a great way to do that is to have your design on your artboard fully up there, and then find that negative space that you're not going to use, and then create a new layer, then just make a shape on that layer, turn everything else off. Then you know that you can cut something out without actually wasting your material or damaging what it is you're working on. So that's usually how I guide people to test their material first. Could they go at 6 speed, real slow, and guarantee a cut? Most definitely, but then it's going to take much longer. And then they're burning their material more too. And most people don't want incredibly burnt edges. So there's that. And that's what I got.
Do we have other general questions? Anything that we haven't covered that we might cover in the future? Feel free to chime in. Well, while you were thinking, I'm going to go ahead and post a link in the chat to a follow-up survey that we have that we would appreciate you filling out. And look for that in just a minute.
Thanks, Michaela.
Anybody have any other laser questions? Anything relating to a laser?
I guess I'm still curious about how you, or maybe some of the other folks here on the call, do like a badging, or we talked about being certified on certain equipment, or like, someone's been signed off because they've been through a training, they've put in maybe a certain number of hours, supervised hours on a machine. I'm just curious if anybody does any sort of badging like that to help folks level up and for staff to recognize, who's coming with what kind of experience.
We can definitely let everyone answer that, anyone that would like to, but very quickly, I can just say that we don't do that here. We just have you come in, what are you going to do? And we try to guide you through that. And since we always have multiple people in here supervising, yeah, we just kind of give them a run through. And if they seem capable, like Carolyn said, we try to get to know these people and listen to them. And as long as they're listening to us and they seem responsible, we just let them do their thing while being in the same room with them. That tends to work. But yeah, we always do have somebody, so we don't do any of the certifying.
We do have like some quick guides, and we do often refer people to the video on our website. But yeah, I think there are a lot of pros and cons to badging versus not badging, and it really depends on the makerspace.
Who trains the people in using the like design programs? Do you have something that's teaching them that, or do you expect them to do that on their own? And because that's the big thing, is like trying to get people to understand how to use the programs, not just the equipment.
Yeah. Carolyn?
No. Go ahead, Eric.
It all depends on the person. There are very few instances where there is someone who's just incapable of it, and we decide to kind of just do it for them. I think we've had that happen. Maybe I've had that happen maybe 2 or 3 times in the 2 years that I've been here. Other than that, if they seem like they can pick it up relatively quickly, we will just teach them right then and there. But if it seems like they do want to go through with the process and it's going to take them some time, what's nice about our area, Greene County, is that if you have a library card here, you have access to LinkedIn Learning, which used to be lynda.com. And then we like to tell people to pair that with YouTube. As wonderful as LinkedIn Learning is, it's a bunch of professionals that have been in their fields for a very long time. They forget what it's like to be a beginner. And that's what YouTube's great for. You can watch a 2-minute YouTube video and pick up some beginner tutorials very quickly. So yeah, we tell them that to go home, either watch it there or go home, learn some stuff, design there, and come back. And then there's always canva.com. There's some tutorials with that that make it pretty easy. You can pretty much learn everything Canva has to offer in 20-30 minutes.
Do you have like a list of like videos that you give them, like if you want to learn how to use this, or you just like let them kind of like free range learn?
The latter.
Okay.
Yeah.
We will sit down with patrons though, and at least I do. If the patron is required, again, you got to know them. Some of them are manipulative and want you to do their work for them. Others truly don't even know how to use a keyboard. Many, we can kind of tell who belongs in a makerspace when they walk in. And those are the people that really do want to learn. We have people that come in and have notebooks and are taking notes. So the next time they come in, they're not asking us the exact same questions. But if I'm talking to a person on the phone who's making an appointment and they are new or new to that machine, I tell them design can take a long time, and I invite them to come in prior to their appointment, maybe the day before, and work on their design. So when they come in, the appointment is for the machine, not for design. So if you come in with your design ready, you have 2 hours on that machine. But if you spend an hour and 45 minutes, we might not be able to even start your project because it's going to take 20 minutes and you've only got 15 minutes left in your appointment. That goes back also to setting that expectation. But we definitely help them through the design process. I am going to have to go. I have something at 4, but it was really nice. And feel free to reach out through the website if you guys have any other points you'd like to share. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you. Okay. I can't hear you.
Thanks, folks, for coming. Have one more slide here. Obviously, only part of the recording happened, but we will still post that and send you a follow-up link to that. Thanks, everyone, for making it out today. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, this has been great. Take care, y'all.